Hi, welcome to another edition of Antique Radio Archaeology. Today we're going to be doing a restoration on not one, but two, possibly three, Chelsea Regeno Three regenerative receivers. Now, the Regeno Three receiver came out in about 1925. The very first advertisement was in March of 1925 in the Pittsburgh Press. Now, that particular advertisement didn't have a picture, but it described the radio that would later appear in pictures in the ads in September of 1925 in various publications. And the Regeno 3 radio, or Model 140, as described by the Supply Riddle Hardware Company catalog, was selling for about $26, which was also the same price in that early Pittsburgh ad, which was a couple dollars off. It was $24 in that ad. Now, at that same time in September, the Gimbel Brothers department stores came out with the Magnet ZR-30 regenerative receiver, and that particular radio was announced as a predecessor to the Transcontinental ZR-4, which was also a regenerative receiver. Now, the similarities between the two are quite obvious. They're both almost identical as far as parts are concerned. Now, internally, the transformers are a little different, but they're still using the Model 50 transformers. The main differences between the two are the closed internal metal cabinet, the elimination of terminals, opting for a wiring harness instead, the elimination of the coil taps, the coil tap selector switch, and they supplied only loudspeaker pin jacks, eliminating the headphone jack provided on the ZR-4. So the radio is obviously regenerative. It has 3 tubes, a condenser tuning dial, 1 regenerative dial, and 1 rheostat knob on the front panel. So it's definitely a slimmed down version of the ZR-4. Now, what I'm going to be doing in this particular restoration is I have one Model 140 Regeno 3 and I have one Magnet ZR-30. I also have an additional Model 140 and an additional ZR-30, but the problem I have is the Model 140 is so badly damaged on the plate that I just really don't foresee being able to reuse that as a radio, so I will probably use it for parts to get the other 3 going. Now, I'm initially going to start off with the 2. If I think I can do the other ZR-30, I'll go ahead and throw that into the mix as well. So this is going to be a little bit different in that I'm going to be restoring more than one radio at the same time. So bear with me, and let's go ahead and take a look at what we have. Alright, let's take a look first at the Regeno 3, or the Model 140. This is it right here, and I'll tell you right now, this color is definitely not accurate. It's supposed to be that reddish brown color. You can see some around the tube sockets here. You can see some of the old color, and down in between here you can see it. So yeah, somebody repainted it. This thing has been restored before, and the person who did it obviously replaced the rheostat, and I don't know what it looks like inside yet. We're going to get into it. It's missing the wiring harness in the back. It might be shoved up in there somewhere, but that's pretty much where I'm at on this one. And the case is in pretty good shape. I definitely I used this lid here. I actually swapped out from the bad case that I had because the lid on this one was bad. So I was able to make one good case between the two, and I did. So this here is the ZR-30. Now, if you notice, I do have some condition issues on the faceplate. I've got some veneer that's missing here, got some veneer missing there. Obviously some of the lettering has disappeared, but this is actually in a lot better shape than that other one. Now, this one does have the placard in it, ZR-30 placard, which is good. I'm going to reuse that. It is the proper color. I do need to redo this. Now, I'm going to try something different, something I haven't tried before. And I've been using Georgia clay as my go-to color on this, but the problem I ran into is the Georgia clay is no longer available. So I've had to find another color. However, one of the things I discovered was the red primer is the exact same color as what I'm looking at here. It's a little hard to tell with the lighting, but that is the right color. Now, the only problem that I have, and of course you can't tell on this because it's so faded, but these are usually shiny. And I know that because if you take these plates off, a lot of times you'll see the shininess underneath. And the way I'm going to try and alleviate that is by using this primer and putting a clear coat over it. So let's see if that works. I don't know what I'm going to run into, but I do have a can of Georgia clay somewhere. I should have enough to do both radios if I have to, but I'm going to give this a shot first. Let's see what happens. So outside of the faceplate, this too has a pretty decent condition case. This one does have the wiring harness, which does need to be replaced, and we will do that. And yeah, this is, oh, there's some rust on the hinges there, which won't be an issue. I can probably use the other hinges off one of the other radios if I have to. But there you have it. That's what I know so far. The next step is to go ahead and start disassembling these and seeing what we got inside. I am concerned about the transformers. That is usually the biggest issue. Finding good transformers has always been a nightmare, and hopefully we will have at least some good coils in there, but we'll see. I'm just going to disassemble one on camera, and then you'll get the gist. Now, one of the things about this radio is these here are wrong. Those are not the right washers. I don't know why. Well, like I said, this one's been restored. That knob is incorrect. So before I actually get started, what I'd like to do is kind of show you what I did here. I did do up a drawing, and the drawing shows you all the connections. So when I disassemble this, I'll know how to hook it all up, and of course from that connection drawing I was able to produce a schematic, so that will assist me in reassembly later. Unscrew those two. Both halves are separated. These here are just the filament wires. That completes that disassembly. Now there's a solder point down here on that resistor back here, which you can't see very well. It's right back down in here. And that particular solder point is where all my A- stuff comes together. So I'm going to try and get in there. Alright, so what I have left is a resistor and transformer and my little terminals. There's all our parts. Everything's disassembled and we're ready to do some work here. I'm going to need to get this faceplate done, need to get the chassis cleaned up and repainted, and of course clean up some parts here and repair that transformer. Alright, one of the things I'd like to do is check out this transformer, see whether we got a good transformer here or not. Now, each side, this should be the primary side, this should be the secondary, and then they flip it on the other side. So this would be the primary, this should be the secondary. And I believe it is, yeah. I can tell because the secondary coil is always on the outside on these. There's a secondary coil here. So, this is a primary. And that should read something. Should read about 1K, and I'm not. So I'm willing to bet that primary shot. Alright, secondary should read 5 to 6K. Okay, it's reading about 6K, I think. Or is it? No, it's not reading anything. It's reading me. Those on the mega ohms. Nope, nothing. So that coil is dead. Both primary and secondary. How about this one? Ah, there we go. So I'm reading 6.11K on the secondary. The primary on this side is these two. I should read 1K there. Ah, I do. 978 ohms, close enough to 1K. Alright, so I know that that coil is, or that transformer is good, this one is bad. Okay, when reassembling the transformer, you always want to put the primary upwards on one, downwards on the other. So I'm going to do that. Now, Okay, so this is the part of the restoration that I've really been struggling with. It's definitely going to be my biggest challenge. First of all, none of these faceplates are in good shape at all. All of them have their issues in various degrees, and it's going to be tough to get these to be even presentable. So first of all, let's take a look at this one right here. This one has a few obvious issues. It has been restored before. There's veneer replacement here, 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 and a big chunk here. They did an okay job of it, but it definitely could have been done a little bit better. They did not do a very good job of blending in the veneer slices. Now, there's a lot of bubbling here. You may or may not be able to see that, but right here it's all bubbled, so there's air underneath there. That all needs to be corrected. There's a chip over here, so, and that piece right there is kind of busted up. That's easy because it's hidden anyway by the dial. But other than that, you know, you've got the finish itself is less than desirable, and I really have to watch it because all this printing can easily be wiped off by doing something wrong and trying to work on that finish. So that's really what is my biggest problem with this one and the others as well. So that's this particular panel. This is from the 140 here. Now this one isn't horrible. I do have some veneer issues here that have to be resolved. Again, finish is my big thing on this one. But overall, this is definitely the faceplate that's in probably the best condition, other than the fact that some of my lettering's been wiped off. But we'll do what we can do with that one. And this one here has a chunk of veneer there, and there's a lot of veneer work needs to be done here. As you can see, I've got lifted veneer pretty much all along here that has to be taken care of, plus missing veneer pieces, and on the back side too I've got some issues to contend with. So that's it. Quite a bit of damage to take care of, but I'm going to go ahead and get started on it. So I'm going to start with this one right here, the one with all the lifting veneer on the edge there. This right here is a little syringe. You can get these off of Amazon, relatively cheap. So, got my glue in the syringe. Now, this has been glued before, and down here has been glued before, so let me get started up under there if I can. Alright. Now, I've got a lot of glue up underneath these things, and there's a reason for it. I'm going to use the blade here to try and spread it around as much as I can. Okay, so here's my other ZR-30 panel, and this is the one that has that bubbled area. What I'm going to do here, and I hate to do this, but I've got to, I need to cut the veneer with the grain, try and release that area with the bubbles. Okay, so that's the second coat. And just to let you know, I'm not just working on 2 radios. Okay, so got all my cabinets ready to go. We're going to start staining now. So one of the things that's really important about this restoration is keeping all 3 of these relatively organized. I've kept all the hardware with the particular cases, and I went ahead and printed up the little placards that go in these. Obviously this one's different than those 2. There are a couple of differences between these cases. The biggest, this one here has a cutout down here, and that went with the original Regeno 3 Model 140. The ZR-30s had 2 different cases. One of them has the little latching mechanism for the top opening door, and the other one does not. It just has hinges. So I just want to keep everything original, so I'm going to go ahead and put these cases together, and we'll go from there. So all 3 cabinets are complete. Okay, so now I've gotten to the point where I need to do something about this wiring harness, and as you can see, this thing's got really bad cable. It's not usable. So I went ahead and I've got some cloth covered wire here, and I cut all of this to 3.5 feet, which is about a little bit less than what this is. And what I'm going to use for the sheath here is shoestring. I found this through Amazon, and it's big enough to slide all the wires through, which I only need to slide 3 of the wires through because the antenna wire is separated from the other 3. So this should be pretty simple. Okay, so I'm going to take the shoelace and cut it in half. That makes it about 2.5 feet. These are about 3.5 feet, so it gives me a little bit of slack. slide it through that sheath. Okay. Okay, so now what I'm going to do here, I'll pull this back. So I'm going to fold that in on itself. Okay. Do the same on the other end. Alright, so there we go. There's my harness. And I'm going to go ahead and put a little bit of crazy glue on here to kind of seal the edges on the ends. And that's it. Okay, before we begin assembly, let's talk about how this Regeno 3 operates. First of all, it's a little different than the other Chelsea radios in that your RF comes in off your antenna into L2, which is the first few turns of this spiderweb coil, which is tied to chassis ground. Now, the other side of this is L3, which is right here, and L3 in conjunction with BC1, which you can see here is the tie right there, and then both wind up going to the chassis ground, which is there and there. And as you can see, L3, chassis ground there, BC1, chassis ground there, and this forms a tank circuit. This allows the RF signal to be selected based on the tank circuit's tuning to the specific frequency you want to hear. Now, obviously, what's going to happen is that frequency is going to be passed through the grid leak to the grid of V1, and that's done right here through the grid leak to the grid of V1. And then, of course, the plate side of V1 comes back and hits L1, which is here, which passes through L1 over to T1, which comes here and hits T1 there. And C1 is going to filter off part of that RF signal and allow the audio to pass. Well, at the same time, you're getting feedback through this coil here onto these coils here, which is helping to regenerate that signal to make it even bigger, more capable of being detected by this detector. So what happens after that is T1 is going to amplify that signal, and T1 is right here. Your plate side of T1 off of V1 here is right there, and then the other side of that comes over to here, which hits your B plus 45. And as you can see, that's right here, the plate, and this comes over here to B plus 45. Now, that signal is obviously going to be amplified by T1 approximately 5 times, and then it's going to pass on to the grid of V2. So the other side of T1 is going to come over here and hit the grid of V2, and of course the other side of that comes down and hits the chassis ground, which is right there. And as it passes that signal, it's going to be amplified by V2, passed on to T2. So the plate here goes over here and hits T2. The other side of T2 is going to be tied to the 45 volts here, which is also hitting that loudspeaker jack here. And that's going to allow that signal to be amplified again by 5 times before it hits the final stage of amplification, which is V3 on the grid. So the grid of T2 is going to come over here and hit V3 right there. And then, of course, the other side of that grid is going to be tied back to the ground, which is right there, goes to the ground. So those are the connections, your filament voltages. You got your A plus B minus, which comes over here and hits the first filament, and those are all tied in series. And here you've got it, our A plus B minus comes here, here, and here. And then your ground side of that is actually through the wiper here, comes back and hits that side of the filament, which are tied to the tubes there. And as you can see, boom, right there, there, and there. So your signal is developed through your loudspeaker, which you will hear the detected audio as an amplified signal through the 2 stages of amplification. So that's pretty much it.
The records are stacked and ready to scan, and here's the lineup. We got the Dorsey brothers, Tommy and Jimmy, on a couple of their better-known oldies. Johnny Mercer's latest, a real classic by Larry Clinton and Dee Wayne. That's a lot of music to cram into a little bit of time, so let's get on the ball with Tommy Dorsey's Who.
So what can I say? This has been quite the journey. This started actually 4 months ago. So my intention was to just restore 2 of the Regeno Threes made by the Chelsea Radio Company. And I wound up actually restoring 3 of the 4 that I had. Obviously the 4th one is beyond any reasonable repair. So I'm still glad I was able to get 3 out of the bunch. Now I have 1 Chelsea branded Regeno 3 and 2 of the Gimbel's branded Regeno 3s out of this selection of radios, and I'm quite thrilled with them. As we bring this project to a close, happy restorations everybody. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Hope to see you again next one. Goodbye.